Hello friends, this is lesson number 40 in the series of literary criticism and theories. Today in this lesson we shall discuss William Empson as a new critic. About William Empson, one thing is interesting that he is the student of Sir I.A. Richards. In the beginning of this section of new criticism, I told you about I.A. Richards, and he is also considered as the pioneer of practical criticism. I.A. Richards belonged to England or Britain, so we have William Empson also as a British literary critic. Now, about his timeline, he was born in the year 1906 and died 1984. And among his important works, we have several names. So first, it's a 7 types of ambiguity. 7 types of ambiguity. We shall discuss about this work in brief. And then there are other works like some versions of Pastoral, The Face of Buddha, and Milton's God. Milton's God. First, about this work you can get an idea. John Milton, he has written a work, the name is Paradise Lost. And in that work we see Satan as a major character, in fact protagonist we can call him. And William Empson is talking about Satan's problem. He is saying that Satan was earlier an angel and later he became Satan, means villain sort of person, because he stood for his superiority and he took a firm stand against the God and he revolted. And the same sort of things we see in Christianity. The people are there, they are not ready to follow the Christianity, and they are not ready to suppress their own desires. So as we see Satan, he was revolting against the God, and he was in some sort of a dilemma, whether to stand against the God or to fulfill his own desires. Because if he take a stand against the God, then only then he will be able to fulfill his own desires. Otherwise he has to suppress his desires. So the same way he is criticizing the Christianity. This is important point. In Milton's God, William Empson is criticizing the Christianity. He is saying that every Christian is in dilemma, whether to follow the religious way. If one is following the religious way, then he will have to suppress his own worldly desires. If he goes against the religion, only then he will be able to live a free life. In every religion we see that there are some strict foundations on human being. So that is about Milton's God. So the central idea in this work is that it talks about the dilemma in the mind of Satan, or in Satan's mind. It talks about that dilemma, and also it talks about the criticism of Christianity. And the important work that I mentioned earlier, that is the 7 types of ambiguity. In this work, William Empson is talking about the ambiguity. What is ambiguity? Sometimes we say that this text is ambiguous. What does it mean? It means something like it is confusing. But the literal meaning from ambiguity we take that when you have a text and you are not sure that what does it mean, there are more than one meaning. If there is a line and you are taking 2 meanings, one simple sentence. If I am saying that I am going to bank, then what does it mean? Which bank? Is it a financial institution where we can draw money or we can do all sorts of financial dealings, or is it the riverside place, bank, that is also bank? So in this sentence we are not getting a proper meaning, or we are getting more than one meaning. That is ambiguity. In new criticism we see that the critics, they are analyzing the text only. They are not going deep into the background of the author or the political social conditions. So when you have a text, it becomes very hard to make a proper meaning of any statement. Sometimes the statements are so clear. If I am saying that I am going to market, that is pretty simple. There can be only one meaning from this statement. But if I am saying, okay, one more examples we can say, the foreigners are hunting dogs. The foreigners are hunting dogs. Now there are two possible meanings. The one is the foreigners, they are labeled as dogs, hunting dogs. They are called as hunting dogs. Second, the foreigners, they are hunting the dogs, means they are doing this act of hunting. So as in this statement we are seeing the two possible meanings. So in literature there is every possibility. So that is ambiguity. And when these sort of ambiguities are you can say occurring in the text, then it becomes very difficult for a new critic to analyze the text. So that is why William Empson is saying that a writer should avoid these sort of ambiguities. He has categorized them in 7 different kinds, but we will not talk about these kinds because these types of the ambiguities, they were never asked in the UGC NET exam. So we just talk about a few of them and their examples. The first, metaphor. He is saying, William Empson, the use of metaphor makes the text more ambiguous. What is metaphor? Metaphor is when we are comparing the two different things. They may be sharing any common property, but most of their properties or qualities are quite different. If I am saying that I am the lion of this class, now what sort of meaning you can produce from this statement? The same statement you can tell to your friends and then ask them what does it mean. You might see that difference in opinion. Some people may say that hungry as the lion is, dangerous as a lion is, or brave as a lion is, or the king, as we have lion as a king in the jungle, as a monitor you might say in the class. So different meanings we are getting from this statement. And the use of metaphors really makes a text a bit difficult to understand. Metaphors, we all know that simile, another figure of speech. In the simile we use the word like. In metaphors we just directly compare the two different objects. From literature, one metaphor or the example of metaphor we have in James Joyce. There is a writer, British writer James Joyce, and he has written a work, Ulysses. In that he is using one sentence, simple sentence: history is a nightmare from which I am trying to wake. Now he has compared history with nightmare, and you can now try to understand what does it mean. It will be difficult for us. Means history and nightmare, two different things. There may be something common between them, maybe something bad in the history, something bad in the nightmare. So it becomes difficult whenever we are using metaphor. One more example. We have metaphysical poets. They tend to use more conceits. In conceits, metaphysical conceits, the things they compare are entirely different ones. One poem by John Donne we have, that is Flea. In that poem, he has compared the love with the flea. Flea, what does it mean? You can search it on Google. It is small insect. Small, very small insect like scorpion. So what the poet is doing, he is comparing the bite of flea to the sexual affair. He is saying that the flea, that insect, has bitten him, and also it has bitten his beloved. Now their blood is mixed, and now as their blood is mixed, so there is no shame or sin if they go for love making. So that sort of comparison he is making. So that is the example of metaphors. More figure of speech if you use other types as well, like antithesis. In Hamlet we have one very famous statement: to be or not to be. Now the two different ideas are there. That is also another type of ambiguity. The two different ideas are presented in one statement. Here we are not sure that what really is in the mind of the Hamlet. whether he wants to kill his uncle Claudius. I hope you have gone through somewhat about Hamlet, written by William Shakespeare. In that we have Hamlet. He is looking to take revenge upon his uncle for the murder of his father. So we are not really getting the state of his mind, whether he is looking to take revenge or he is simply sparing his uncle. So that is the use of antithesis. Pun is another example of that types of ambiguity. What is pun? Whenever we use the word for different meanings, sometimes we have two different words, sometimes one word is having two different meanings. Like a word, as in the beginning I told you, bank. With bank we have two different meanings. One more example, like leave or leaves. Leaves belong, we can say, like from the tree we have leaves, and also there is a verb, leaves means departing. So one sentence, if I say that he saw the tree and leaves, he saw the tree and leaves. So now what does it mean here by leaves? Maybe he departed, or maybe he saw the tree and also the leaves. So there is confusion. We are getting two different meanings. So that is ambiguity with the pun. Pun, whenever we have pun, there is a possibility that the homonyms, like the word we have see. So you don't know which word I am talking about, see. It can be C-S-E-E or S-E-A. So that is also comes under the category of pun. One more example from literature we can take. In Romeo and Juliet, written by William Shakespeare, there is character Tybalt. He is the cousin of Juliet, and we have another character, that is Mercutio. He is the brother sort of person to Romeo. Now Tybalt stabbed Mercutio, and while dying, Mercutio is saying, "Ask for me tomorrow. You shall find me a grave man." Now, here grave means he's either saying that he will be dead by tomorrow, or maybe the second meaning, that is, he might see him as a sad man. Why? Because there is some sort of betrayal. Because during their quarrel, when in fact it was a fight between Tybalt and Mercutio, and during that fight Romeo came and he stopped Mercutio, and while he stopped Mercutio, then Tybalt took the advantage and he killed Mercutio. So that sort of things we get to understand only when we read the whole text. Otherwise there will be a confusion whenever we read a statement. So that is a problem in the text. So that is why William Empson is saying that one should avoid the use of these sort of figure of speech that we have all different kinds of, like even in allegory. In allegory, one example we can take from George Orwell's Animal Farm. Now what is allegory? Allegory means presenting something with a different thing. In Animal Farm, we have, if you have not gone through this work or you do not know of actually anything about this work, Animal Farm talks about a farm where the animals are living, and now they are taking the hold of that farm, and they are now taking every sort of decision. So it is an allegory on humans, but on which people? So the critics are saying, considering the background of George Orwell, they are saying that it is an allegory on Russian and French leaders and Napoleon or sort of persons. But we do not really exactly know that on which people he is targeting, which people. So that is the use of allegory, and that is also making some sort of confusion in the minds of the reader. So there are different kinds, and I have tried to give you some of the examples from the literature. In another type, we have author is using two opposite words in a single statement. That shows the division of mind, division of the author's mind. Like if a writer is saying love is an ideal thing, marriage is a real thing, what really he wants to say to us, we can't really get. So the two opposite, almost like love is an ideal thing, marriage is a real thing. So whenever the writer is using either the different sort of figure of speech or the metaphors as I have mentioned, then we see the text is going to be ambiguous. In one more type of ambiguity, we see that the author is saying something, not complete, only something, half part of the statement you can say, and then leave it as it is. He's not completing the statement, and then he's just letting the things up to the reader to assume that what will happen next. That also lead to ambiguity. So that's all about ambiguity. Means whenever the text is confusing and it is producing more than one meaning, where the reader finds himself in that sort of a position where he cannot really be sure that what does it mean by this statement, that is ambiguity. Okay, there are a few questions about William Empson in the previous years. One simple question, if you can remember, that who has written 7 types of ambiguity? We have simple answer, that is William Empson. Another question, what does it mean by ambiguity? The right answer is a text that can be interpreted in more than one way. Another question, William Empson has written 7 types of ambiguity, and what is the central idea of this work? So that is an analysis of poetic ambivalence. Poetic ambivalence. Here, ambivalence means mixed feeling or contradictory ideas. One more question, that in fact it was a multiple means works were given there, and we have to find out which the works are written by William Empson. So Milton's God by William Empson, 7 types of ambiguity, surely. Some versions of Pastoral. These 3 works are written by William Empson, but another work, Dyer's Hand. This work is not written by William Empson. It is a work written by Auden, W.H. Auden. Now, these are the 3-4 questions asked from William Empson. So this is our last lesson on in New Criticism series. So before finishing this lesson, I would like to just recite what we have studied in the past 4 or 5 lessons about in New Criticism. I'll just simply tell you about these writers, because sometimes we simply know, if we just try to remember that this writer has given this concept, it will be enough. So first we start from I.A. Richards, the pioneer of practical criticism. He has talked about 4 types of meanings. And then we have Kenneth Brooks. He talked about 2 ideas. One is language of paradox, and the second is heresy of paraphrase. Then we have F.R. Lewis. He talked about the great tradition, and in that great tradition he include 4 novelists. Try to remember their names: Jane Austen, George Eliot, Henry James, and Joseph Conrad. Then Wimsatt and Beardsley, we had a lesson on them actually as well. Wimsatt and Beardsley, they are 2 people, and their idea of fallacy, intentional fallacy and affective fallacy. Then Alan Tate, he gave the idea of tension in poetry, and also the idea of 2 kinds of meanings: denotative meanings and connotative meaning. Richard Palmer Blackmore, he gave the concept of immature critics and professional critics. Then John Crow Ransom, he wrote a work by the title New Criticism, and he talked about the idea of 3 types of poems: physical poetry, platonic poetry, and metaphysical poetry. And then we have William Empson. He is famous for 7 types of ambiguity. And one last thing for this lesson, that all these writers, they are American and British. So we know that New Criticism, it comes mostly from the British writers and also from the American writers. William Empson, I.A. Richards, and F.R. Lewis. These 3 are the British writers. Kenneth Brooks, Wimsatt and Beardsley, John Crow Ransom, Richard Palmer Blackmore, They are American writers. And Alan Tate, of course, he is also an American writer. So that's it for this lesson of New Criticism and William Empson. By the next lesson, we shall start formalism. Thanks a lot for watching this lesson. Have a great day.